So, if you've unfortunately found yourself entangled up in a business lawsuit and you see both your business name there and your name as an individual, how do the courts decide when to pierce the corporate veil and allow that suit to go forward against you as an individual? Well, there are generally three things that the courts look at, or three questions that you might ask. The first is that, as an owner of the business, did you have so much control over it that the business really can't be distinguished from you as an individual versus the business itself? In the case law, in the legal world, we talk about using veil piercing in situations where the business entity has, quote, no separate mind, will, or existence of its own. So that's why we always advise clients, when you're running a business, you've got to have that separation, right? There's your personal accounts, and then there are your business bank accounts, right? There's your personal equipment and things that you might own, and then there are things that are owned by the business. And we do really try to keep those two as separate as possible while still being realistic to, just how small businesses operate in the real world. So, is the business truly separate? And this is why, in these types of disputes, the other side will often ask us, is there a business bank account? Was there a company operating agreement? Prove to us that you were running a real business and that it was something other than just you. The second thing that the courts will ask is, as the owner of the business, were you using it? Were you exercising your control over that business in a way that committed fraud against, the plaintiff that's suing you? Were you using it to act illegally? Were you using it to do some sort of an unlawful act? Right? So this idea is supposed to be a very rare exception to limited liability, but obviously if you're trying to cheat people, if you're trying to defraud your creditors, if you're trying to hide assets, in those situations, the court will rightfully attempt to pierce the veil and get to your personal assets in addition to whatever the business has. And then finally, after the court's looked at those two questions, the court will ask, okay, was the plaintiff, the person that's suing you in this particular instance, were they harmed by both of those things, right? Your control over the business and you committing some type of fraud or bad act. And oftentimes those things all get tied together, and the answer will often be yes. So as I said, this idea of piercing the veil and getting past the limited liability protection of an LLC or corporation is supposed to be rare, right? It's not supposed to happen all the time. It's not supposed to be the default rule for small businesses, right? So merely alleging that there was a breach of contract or there was some sort of a negligence is not supposed to be enough, at least in theory, to pierce the veil and sue you, Mr. Small Business Owner. But it's a tactic that we see used time and time and time again against small businesses and their owners.